been incredibly banged up this season, I think is positive for them too. Now, obviously, if both of them get upset, we may be having a different conversation on Monday morning, but I don't anticipate that happening for either one of these teams.
Yeah, the Lions are the one for me where it's definitive that having the bye was so massive, and I don't look at that as rust because it almost seems like if they would have played last week, this would have been their team. If they play this week, that would have been their team. And this week team is much better than their possible last week team.
Yeah, you're talking about them being able to have David Montgomery and Terry and Arnold in the lineup. That's huge.
Which wouldn't have happened last week, right?
It wouldn't have happened last week. Yeah. They're incredibly thin in their secondary, so being able to have the guy that you used the first-round pick on, friend of the show, Terry and Arnold, right. I think that's important. Now, he's been uneven, but still, he's a talented player. And at this point, with that defense, having, I think 14 guys on IR on one point in the season, they just need bodies. And so being able to have that extra week of rest going into the postseason is going to be huge. But then also for Detroit, because this is a team that's trying to figure out how to win a championship, to take one of those games out of the equation to be 1 of 8 rather than to have to be 1 of 14 and play on Wild Card Weekend, I thought was important for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of this is that we have projected out the idea of the Chiefs winning it all. And if they do win it all, it's 3 in a row. And some people, like CC, have said, if that happens, then I'm going to give that crown of GOAT to Patrick Mahomes. I would not do that. Smalls, I think you're TBD on that. You've called him GOAT in waiting, right? So maybe you do, maybe you don't. Let's see how it plays out. If we're going to do that, do we then need to do it with the coach? If Andy Reid and the Chiefs win it all, do we need to start the Andy Reid GOAT conversation as it relates to Belichick? Obviously, I would not do that as a Belichick lifer here, but is that conversation up for grabs here?
I mean, it should have started already. I mean, Andy Reid has won 100-plus games with 2 different franchises. So it's not as if it's a situation where he just became a good coach when Patrick Mahomes arrived into the NFL. He's been doing it at a high level for a really long time. Where they went to 4 conference championship games with the Philadelphia Eagles, got to a Super Bowl. So even though he hadn't had the high-end success, even though he was the bridesmaid, never a bride, we all knew that Andy Reid, from an X's and O's standpoint, was one of the best in the game. Now, game management used to be his Achilles heel, but not anymore because we're seeing it with the Kansas City Chiefs. This team is used to being in and winning close football games. So, yeah, I think we're going to start having that conversation about Andy Reid, and the volume on it is going to get ratcheted up louder because if he wins tomorrow, Andy Reid has a chance to become the 4th coach in NFL history to surpass 300 wins in the National Football League. Mm-hmm. That is a hell of an accomplishment. Right now, we're looking at how close he is to Bill Belichick, who's at 333 wins, and then, of course, Don Shula at 347 wins. I don't think it's a hot take to say that Andy Reid is going to surpass both of them within the next decade.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
That is going to happen. As long as he continues to coach, he is going to surpass them. He will have the most all-time wins. And you got to imagine that there are going to be a couple of more championships in the trophy case as well. So if that ends up being the case, how could we not talk about Andy Reid being the GOAT when it comes to the greatest coach of all time?
He definitely deserves to be in the conversation. And he would be, 40-something wins away? He could get that in 3-4 years. He could,
yeah.
You say decade, he could get that in a half a decade.
Yeah.
And with Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, why would you not think that Andy Reid would hit that mark? So if he becomes the winningest coach of all time, he adds another Super Bowl trophy to his arsenal. And think about that. If he's going to be coaching the Chiefs for another 5 years, I'm sure that there's the potential for yet another Super Bowl, if not more, to be added.
Yeah.
I think the longer that Andy Reid stays with the Kansas City Chiefs, the more we're going to talk about him being the GOAT, or at least being closer to the GOAT.
I think definitively Andy Reid's going to be the winningest coach in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
Like, unless he walks away, he's, quote-unquote, only 66. 5 more seasons gets you to where Belichick is age-wise now, right?
Yeah.
Or Pete Carroll, right? And Pete Carroll's in the mix for some of these jobs, rightfully so. What do you say about him, Pete Carroll? Spry?
Spry 73.
Andy Reid doesn't feel as spry as Pete Carroll, maybe. But I think definitively.
Or give him a cheeseburger, and then you'll see.
There you go.
I got something on that later in the show. I do have something on that. Well done.
You'll see Big Red get spry.
Yeah. I have an Andy Reid cheeseburger story for everybody later in the show today. But I think he's going to be the winningest coach relative to the number of wins. But this is why, this entire conversation is why I believe the team with the most pressure on him in the postseason is actually Kansas City. Because while we're not going to rip them if they lose, obviously, what they have to gain team-wise and individually is so unbelievably great we are going to have people like Chris Canty, who played 11 years in this league, who analyzes this sport literally better than anyone anywhere, say to you, the quarterback's the best I've ever seen, and the coach is the best I've ever seen. You're not going to say that if Lamar wins. You're not going to say that if Josh Allen wins. You're not going to say that about Sirianni and Hurts. This group this year has more on the line than any other team in the NFL, because you're not going to actually say that, I don't think, if they lose this year and win next year, because it wouldn't be 3 in a row. The three-peat possibility, which is a strong one, is so great that I think there's more on the line and arguably more pressure for the Chiefs because of the Andy Reid and Mahomes conversation than any other team. You're shaking your head against me. Why?
Yeah, I disagree with that, because while there is historically a lot on the line, something so special and so rare, if they don't make it, we're not talking about their legacy being altered in a negative way. We're not talking about their window closing. If Lamar Jackson gets bounced this weekend by Josh Allen, we're talking about his legacy in a negative way. We're talking about him being someone who can get individual awards but can't get it done in the second round of the playoffs and can't bring home the Lombardi. If the Lions don't win, they're looking down the barrel losing both of their coordinators. Who knows what they're going to look like next year if Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson aren't in the building? It could be like when the Philadelphia Eagles lost both of their coordinators, and Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen, and they needed a recalibration period. And you don't know that they're going to be able to come out on the other side looking the same as they are now, or be as formidable as they are now. I think there are teams whose windows are shorter to get it done, whereas with Kansas City, if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, we're still going to have them as the favorites next year.
Yes.
But a counter to the counter on that, everything you said is fair. The counter to the counter is that they lose this year. They win next year. They would then have won 3 and 4 years, right? And 4 and 6, 7.
4 and 7?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Not 4 and 4, right?
Yeah, 4 and 7.
I don't think we then have the conversation that Mahomes is the greatest of all time and that Andy Reid is the greatest of all time, because they wouldn't have had that accomplishment that no one else has had. Now, the Patriots didn't win 4 in the 7 years, but they won 6 over however many. The 3 in a row is the unfathomable one. Yeah, that's why I'm saying they have more on the line.
I guess what Smalls is saying is there's an inevitability to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid together, and we know that they've got a lot more runway, right? I mean, they're probably going to be together at least 5 more seasons, barring anything unforeseen. So you would assume that they're going to have chances to compete for championships, even if they don't win one this year. So if I told you I'm going to set the over-under at 2.5 championships for Andy Reid moving forward, a lot of people are going to blush and probably take the over, because you're just not going to doubt Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid because you're used to seeing them in the championship round so often. They're there every single year.
Right.
And because Mahomes is so good, because he's the best in the sport, the best I've ever seen, then you'd assume that they're going to get a couple more championships, and that's going to bring them closer to Tom Brady. That's going to bring them closer to Bill Belichick eventually. So even though we can have a chance to microwave the GOAT conversation for both the head coach and the quarterback, if they don't get it done this year, we still feel like they're going to put together the individual accomplishments and the team accomplishments that puts them in that rarefied air with Belichick and Brady.
But you just nailed it. If they don't win this year, they got to get to 6. If they win this year, they don't have to get to 6.
Agreed.
That's why everything is on the. If LeBron won 4 in a row, Michael never did that. He wouldn't have had to get to 6. They have found the only and singular out at getting to 6 is winning 3 in a row, because nobody has ever done that. All right, there's another team with a lot on the line, and that is a team that could do it again. It's not the obvious team. Where do they rank amongst the history if they do it again? We will dive into that coming up on Sportsmanlike. Is presented by Progressive Insurance. A riddle brought to you by Progressive Insurance. What do your home and auto have in common? Well, Progressive protects them both. It was an easy riddle. Learn more at Progressive.
GFR 2017 का मैनुअल हाथ में रख ले। हम लोग शुरू करते हैं रूल 163, जिसमें हम बात करेंगे 2-बिट सिस्टम के बारे में। अब ये 2-बिट सिस्टम होता क्या है? कभी भी कोई ऐसा सामान जो बहुत ही कॉम्प्लेक्स नेचर का हो या बहुत ही हाई वैल्यू हो, प्लांट सेटअप के लिए कुछ हो, मशीनरी कोई चाहिए हो, जिसमें या बहुत टेक्निकल अगर कोई इक्विपमेंट है, तो उसमें जो बिडिंग होती है ना, वो 2 तरीके से होती है, मतलब 2 स्टेज में होती है। पहले में क्या होती है, तो जैसे 163 का क्लॉज 1 में फर्स्ट पार्ट की क्या बताई गई है कि फर्स्ट होता है टेक्निकल बिड। ठीक है, तो टेक्निकल बिड में क्या होता है, जो भी टेक्निकल डिटेल्स होते हैं बिडिंग के, कमर्शियल टर्म में उसको लिखा जाता है। सपोज मान लीजिए कि मशीनरी, एक बहुत महंगी मशीनरी हमें प्रोक्योर करनी है, ठीक है, बहुत बड़ी वैल्यू की है, सपोज 50 करोड़ की है, 10 करोड़ की है, जो भी है, वैल्यू यहाँ पर फिक्स नहीं किया गया है, ठीक है। पर एक लार्ज प्लांट के लिए एक मशीनरी, कोई महंगी मशीन जिसमें टेक्निकल बहुत
Turnpike, real earner, Ted Turner. Whip it in the kitchen, that boy was a fast learner. Time to live it up. 2 million tucked in that new Bentley truck. Ain't too many I can trust, so shooters is a must. I reminisce when it was hit or miss. I was innocent until I hit a lick. 7 figures on a mama couch. Don't wanna hear nobody talking about a drought. I'm chilling in the yacht in my Michelin nest. Stitches in my britches, 57S. Swishers, you can smell them on the internet. Ain't beefing with nobody cause I'm killing that. I tossed a pistol on the car chase. Then walked into the church just like the boy Mace. I'm the man out in Barcelona. Got a couple bad bitches out in California.